you are a woman in leadership and you have found yourself in a under pressure situation and maybe you struggled with it a little bit. Well, in this video, this is your opportunity to ask me any questions as it relates to speaking under pressure as a leader. Now, I know that many people struggle with this. And in this video, I want to answer your questions and I will provide you with some insight. If I only had one of the many strategies that I share with you all on this channel that you would want to absolutely master so that you can speak under pressure, I'm going to talk about that today. Now, if you are new to me, welcome. And if you are one of my amazing subscribers, welcome back, friend. I'm so glad that you are here. This channel heavily focuses in on advanced communication skills and strategies to help you communicate more confidently and concisely under pressure. This channel focuses on high stakes, high pressure situations that you will not see in a live setting on any channel here on YouTube. If you like this so far, then you absolutely want to take a look at some of my live videos here on YouTube. If you are starting to develop yourself as someone that can communicate under pressure, maybe you're a woman in leadership and you're in a more visible role. Perhaps you are a man in leadership or someone thinking about leadership. Check out a couple of the videos that talk about thinking on your feet, managing your emotions under pressure, tone of voice, eye contact, body language, silence. I could go on and on and on. There's over 1,000 videos here on this channel to support you. Now, if you happen to be a woman in leadership, you are in my direct target audience that I provide executive coaching and consultation services to. If you are at that point where you know the way you communicated is not going to be the way you need to communicate to move forward and you're tired of being interrupted, you're tired of being overlooked, work with me. Let's work together so we can get you to where you want to be. So let's talk about it. What are some reasons why people struggle with speaking under pressure as a leader? We talked a bit this morning about it on the live, and I shared with you why people struggle with it. There's a lot of things that we talked about. There's three really key reasons why people sometimes struggle under pressure. I'll give you just a bit of insight into one of them. One of them has to do with knowledge. Depending on if you have enough knowledge in here, will ultimately dictate how you communicate under pressure. But the other two, I'll leave for you to watch the video. Now, I want to share with you if I had just one, okay? If I just had one. Now, let me say this. There are many strategies that I have here to help you. Before I go into those, I want to say hello and welcome to those of you watching the live today. Let me know what part of the big, beautiful world you are joining from today, friends. And have you ever struggled with speaking under pressure? Maybe you're in a salary negotiation, you're in a board meeting, you're talking to constituents, or you're just in a really hard conversation. This is your opportunity to ask me anything and learn over 20 years worth of experience and expertise in managing those very challenging, complicated situations. You will learn over 20 years worth of experience in a matter of minutes. And if you want to stand out as a leader, this is the best place for you to be. Ask me anything in the comments below. Now, as I mentioned, the reason why people tend to struggle with this is because there's a lot they're trying to process at one time. And as I mentioned, if I could only give you one thing, only one thing, I would say the most important aspect of you being able to communicate under pressure. Now, as I said, there's a ton that I share on this channel to help you communicate under pressure. But if I just had to give you one, I would say managing your emotions under pressure is probably the most important thing that you want to learn how to do in order to communicate under pressure. I'm going to go into this in more detail in a moment, but I want to say hello to my_tail04. Hope you're doing well today. My_tail04 says, what about stuttering? So if someone actually stutters, and this is a reason why they may be struggling to speak under pressure, when someone stutters, the key is to know that you stutter, because a lot of times people may not be aware that they are stuttering, but they are. But if you are stuttering, and even though I'm a doctor, I'm just sharing with you, this is just in my opinion, I'm not giving you medical advice at the moment. But if you are stuttering, what happens sometimes is that you have to try to slow it down. Slow down what you are saying. And believe it or not, If you slow down a bit, it gives your body and your mind and your mouth just a moment to just kind of catch up. And you can use your silence and your pauses as a major strength for you. I've had this question, my tails, asked previously by another audience member, and they asked a similar question: what happens if I stutter? How do I manage this? I would say use the gifts that you have and use the challenges that you have, because you can actually turn those into being very, very big opportunities for you to really showcase your impact in terms of communicating under pressure. Slowing down and pausing are strategic ways for you to not only manage your emotions under pressure, but be able to communicate under pressure as well. So don't think that stuttering is something that will completely cripple you from being able to speak under pressure. If you work with me, or if you want to work together, we'll work on that. The key is to use your pauses and be silent a bit more if you know that you stutter, because it will actually help you to start building that executive presence. Now, there's three major aspects of communication that most people struggle with, and I talk about this a lot on my channel, but most people struggle with: eye contact, silence, and facial expression. Therefore, my tails, if you know you stutter and you have to slow it down a bit, you are going to start mastering silence. And most people, regardless of where they are in the world, they're not comfortable with just silence in a conversation. So I hope that gives you some insight, some strategies for you to think about. Okay, we have Cat 23rd. Hello, Cat. Good to see you, friend. Cat says, knock, knock. Sorry, I'm late. No problem, Cat. Good to see you, friend. Happy Friday, of course. And I'm here to answer any questions you have. Now, as I mentioned, if I could only give you just one, I can only give you one strategy to help you speak under pressure as a leader. As I mentioned, there's a lot more, but my one strategy would be to manage your emotions under pressure. Now, you may be saying, how can managing my emotions under pressure help me to speak under pressure? Why is this the number one most important strategy that I would give to someone if I could? We'll talk about that a little bit more, but I want to hear from you. Tell me about a time when you have been in a conversation where you had to speak under pressure and perhaps you were caught a bit off guard. Maybe you weren't sure exactly what you wanted to say and how you wanted to say it. Let's talk about it in the comments below. If you have a high pressured, high stakes conversation coming up as a leader here within the next week or so, and you know you're having a hard time figuring out how you want to say and what you want to say, then absolutely put your questions in the comments below. Let me know. Let me help you be able to manage this situation. All right, so let me take a look, see what's going on in the chat. We have Artie Pauls. Hello, welcome, friend. How you doing today? We have J4XL0V3R. Hello, welcome. J4X says, I'm here again. Artie Paul says, how is your day? Welcome back, J4X. Sorry about that. Artie Paul says, how is your day? My day is fantastic. It's Friday here in the United States, so every day Friday is amazing. Okay, and we have J4X says, yippee, I'm here. So happy to see you again. Well, I'm glad you are here, friend. Welcome. And let's see, you have... I was Urea. Oh, okay, sure. So you changed your... Okay, thank you for clarifying. You changed your name. Well, good. Well, good to see you, friend. Welcome back. Glad to see you. ACGB2044. Well, hello, friend. Good to see you again. It's been a little while. Glad you're here. ACGB says, good evening. How are you? I'm always doing fantastically well when I'm able to spend some time with my amazing audience that is here today. So let me know what questions you all have about speaking under pressure. Let's talk about it. What are some challenging situations that you've dealt with? What are some questions you have for me? I have been in some really wonderful situations. I've been in some very, very challenging situations as a leader over the past 20 years. You're welcome to ask me anything as it relates to being able to communicate or start to develop strategies as a leader. I will share with you that I have seen a lot, and I'll be able to provide you with some insight or some way to help you go in a different direction or really communicate and stand out from everybody else. Okay, so J4X says, I left California today. Okay, were you visiting California, or what was going on in California? And what part of California? I used to live in Sacramento a long time ago. Okay, Cat 2030 says, back to stuttering. Question. If it's a natural stuttering, like how you naturally talk, how do you deal with it when under pressure, because naturally it's uncontrollable? It can be challenging to do, especially if that's naturally how you speak, but the key is to just slow down. You have to slow down a bit, because what happens sometimes, and this doesn't happen to everybody, but I've seen a lot of people that tend to stutter. They, especially if they're under pressure, or if they are trying to just have, I would say, they're really excited about a conversation. So as I mentioned in one of my videos before, Kat, sometimes when people are really excited, they'll speak really very, very quickly. The same situation happens to stuttering too. So they're trying to speak, and they may be under pressure, or they may be excited, and the stuttering comes out more. Why? Because their brain and their mouth are trying to speak specifically, but they can't catch up to each other. That's where the stutter comes in. So slowing down is really key. Even if it's something that you know naturally and it can feel uncontrollable, there's always speech therapists. There's a lot of licensed professionals to help you start to work with that. But slowing down, in my very humble opinion, is a great way to try to slow down the stutter. You have to almost speak a lot slower than what normally people would speak, but this is a strength. It's not necessarily a weakness. When you are interacting with people that are executives and leaders, most of the time they are listening. They are not necessarily speaking all of the time. And I believe a lot of people will give themselves a hard time because they stutter and they feel like, oh, I've lost it. Like I can't be able to communicate. But you can. Silence is actually very, very powerful. And if you can master that and slow down speaking, it will help you. Even if you feel as if it's something that just happens with you, there's ways to slow it down. And of course, working with a licensed speech therapist or etc. can help you with that also. Okay, let me go back to the chat. J4X says, also, you know how you told me to take care of the problems with that girl. Okay, so what happened? So let's see. I took care of it. Took care of it. She hates me now though, but yeah. Okay, so I remember that situation, and from what I remember, it was a bit complicated, and you were in the in between from what I would remember from our conversation in terms of what you were doing there. So, well, I hope all goes well for you, friend, because I remember us having a long conversation about that. I do remember that. Okay, ACGB says, now that tax season is over, I'm finally getting some much needed rest, but I do need some advice, please. Okay, sure. Ask me anything. I'm here to support you any way that I can. And yes, tax season is over for now until it picks back up around October, when we all file our taxes as business owners if we need to, and etc. So let me know what questions you have. I'm here to help you any way I can. J4X says, I'm scared and I don't know what to do next. I also need some advice. Well, today is Q&A day, friends, and I'm here to help you any way that I can. If it's a topic I feel like I'm not able to give you any insight on, I will absolutely let you know that. But feel free to ask me. I'm here to help you any way that I can and support you. Okay, Kat says, speaking of California, soon I'll be flying out there. Okay, back to topic. Okay, fantastic. Awesome. I've only lived in Sacramento, so that's the only place I can say that I've actually lived in California. I have visited San Jose. I've only flown through LAX to go to Hawaii, but other than that, I haven't been able to travel around the state as much as I would have liked to. In San Francisco, I have visited there. ACGB says, I do stutter when I'm excited. Okay, thank you for sharing that, and I appreciate that. And that is something that happens. It will happen. But let's continue with your question. But I've gotten much better. I slowed down. I find that when I used to stutter, people would get nervous. Once I realized that, I was able to control it. Okay, my question. Okay, so ACGB is asking a question. Well, once again, ACGB, I appreciate you mentioning that specifically, because that is a lot of times what I see that happens when you stutter. If you're excited, the stutter comes out a lot more. And so knowing that you've been able to slow it down some and probably pause, it is something that really does help you stand out as a leader, because most people, as I mentioned, they struggle with this. So I want you all to know that regardless of whatever you have going on in your life, you may think that you have this issue, you have that issue, you have etc. going on. I don't want you to ever think that whatever it is you have going on in your life is always going to just be there to your detriment. There are ways for you to be able to turn your weaknesses or your areas that you're trying to improve upon into strengths, so that you can be even stronger as it relates to an individual, and then definitely as a communicator. I know a lot of people will say, if you stutter, they'll say, oh well, it's, sorry about that or whatever. But I do see that there's an opportunity for you to truly be able to master those areas of communication that most people tend to struggle with, if you're able to slow down when you're speaking, and especially when you're stuttering. So ACGB 2044, I'm so glad that you were able to slow down, and now you see that that's what happens. Okay, so J4X says, gotta go, see you later. Well, I'll see you later, friend. Cat23 says, I'm going to Hollywood. Fantastic. Well, I hope you have an amazing time. I did not get the chance to go to Hollywood. It is a place I wish I would have visited at some point in time. I don't know if I'm going to get to visit there anytime soon, but I hope you have an absolutely amazing trip. Okay, so ACGB says, question from earlier. Recently, one of my coworkers got upset with me. Instead of coming to me, she went to her manager, who went to my manager. Okay, I see where it's going, sigh. Now, can you share with me a little bit about what happened? Like what the context was of it specifically? Because if someone you're going to have people that do that. Some people, they will feel more comfortable talking to a manager instead of talking to you directly. It just depends on what they were upset with you about specifically. I will give you some insight while I'm waiting for that response from you, ACGB. You're going to have people that do that. There are going to be people out there who just feel like they got to go to the manager. And sometimes they may have a valid reason why they go to the manager, which is a reason why I asked a little bit more about it. But then sometimes they're just people that just can't deal with anything. They can't deal with pressure. They don't like dealing with conflict. They definitely don't like dealing with high pressure, high stakes situations, which is why you subscribe to my channel, so you can learn how to manage these. But some people just automatically go to the manager. I've had that happen to me countless times in my career. I can't tell you how many times that's happened to me, multiple times. Too many for me to count. But the key to it is, think about the situation. What happened? What exactly happened? And I'm speaking to you from an executive coaching standpoint. So I would say, well, what happened? What happened? What was the situation? What happened? And let's think about it in an objective way. Is there something that was communicated either from that coworker or from you that perhaps shifted the conversation into maybe not the ideal type of direction? Or is it something that was completely blown out of proportion? And sometimes when you're in the middle of it, when you're in it and this happens to you, it's easy for us to just get on the emotional bandwagon and say, I don't know why they did this. I wasn't saying it that way. They're not acting nice, or etc. And so some of those situations can come up. But if you think about it objectively and make that determination, is there something that I could have done better? And I do this myself even now to this day. Is there something that I could have done better? Is there a way I could have communicated better in this situation so that this would have been a better outcome? Or has this person completely blown this out of proportion? And I think about this in the most objective way that I can, because when you're in those very under pressure situations, as ACGB just mentioned, it's important to be able to separate your emotions from reality and make a determination in terms of how do you want to move forward in this situation. I hope that gives you some insight, but I'm looking to hear exactly maybe a bit more information about what happened. Okay, so Kat says, how do I communicate uncertainty to my team without losing their confidence? That's a great question. I see ACGB 2044 had a response. Okay, so what we'll do is, let me finish up with ACGB. Kat, I'm going to come to your question because this happened to me a couple times to give you some insight there. I want to say hello to Teddy Mitchell 8508. Hello, welcome. Hope you're doing well today. Okay, ACGB says, this is what happened in her case. I advise her to clean up a mess that was left by someone in her department. I didn't find out until 2 weeks later. My request was so nice. Completely blown out of nothing. Okay, if I offended someone, I'll quickly apologize, but I was never made aware, which is why I was so upset. Okay, so I appreciate you, one, ACGB, for providing me with context, and I really appreciate the way that you were able to deduct what path am I going on here. And this is something that a lot of leaders struggle with. This is that strategic thinking aspect of making decisions. When you're in that situation and something comes at you, being able to do, as you mentioned, you determine that you asked a question for her to clean something up in their department, and you asked it sounds like it was probably in a friendly way, and now that person got upset about it, and you mentioned your request was nice, you know it was out of proportion. So the way you respond moving forward dictates what the intent is. If it's either a friendly disagreement or this is something intentional, you have to figure that out. So you determine that this was blown out of proportion. So how do you manage this? A couple things. And I'm sharing this with you from over 20 years of being in very friendly and very contentious situations. I've had situations like this happen to me before, and I'm sharing with you, just in my very humble opinion, how I would manage this under pressure situation, because it definitely is more of a high stakes situation. Now, the fact that this conversation, this issue, has already went from the person telling their manager, and their manager coming, and their manager talking to your manager, and now your manager's talking to you, and they're making this big deal about you asking someone to clean up in the department. We know a couple of things. One, the person, the coworker that did this, you definitely absolutely want to distance yourself from that person. Why? Because this person, thank you for the heart emojis. This person is not a friendly. I don't care how you put it around. Just the people. Sometimes when you in a leadership role, as you are in, when you ask someone to do something, can you please take care of this, or this is something that happened in the department, is there something that you could potentially do? Then people don't necessarily like to be told to do something. If you think about the way you deliver the information, you said you were being very nice. And so you more than likely was being nice. But the person probably just didn't want to hear it. They may have had an issue with you before and you didn't even know it. And most of the time when those situations actually come up, it just takes the smallest, the simplest, the kindest word you say, and they just go off. And they say, I'm going to go talk to my manager and tell them exactly what they did. So there may have been some issues there before, and you may just have not been privy to it, or you may not have caught it if you were observing them, which is why reading people and observing people is one of the most important aspects of high stakes, high pressure communication. You have to get a sense of what is this person really thinking that they may not want to share. So the fact that this has all happened now, one, keep your distance from coworker. Keep your distance from coworker. Two, you probably already communicated with your manager, because I know you already mentioned that you've had a discussion and that's why you were so upset. I would take the emotion out of it. Why did this person get upset? We know they're blowing it out of proportion. There are people that are going to do things like that. As long as you're able to communicate and articulate the big issue. So when you have this situation happen, for everybody watching, when someone comes at you in a way that ACGB has just experienced, have your data, your facts together. If there is something that happened and this was a big issue and it needed to be cleaned up by the other person or someone in their department, then this is an opportunity for you just to say, this is the situation. This is what we were having, what was occurring. This issue was happening. This issue was happening. And as a leader of the department, I believe that this person would be the best person to take care of the issue. I'm not sure why they didn't actually come to me to discuss this, but since they did not, let me share with you what was going on. And now you have laid out your case in a way, not going off on the person, not saying this coworker is bad, they're horrible, but you're just being objective and stating, this is the problem that was happening. This coworker, to me, appeared to be the best person to be able to resolve the issue. I did not know they had a problem, but these problems that were happening, or why this cleanup was needed, would have caused X impact to the company, X impact to our tax season, or whatever the issue was specifically. But if you put it out that way, then your managers, if they're good managers, or if they are somewhat experienced managers, will start to pick up on, you know what, this may have been blown a bit out of proportion. ACGB was just simply asking this person to clean this up. Okay, I'm just going to have a conversation and I'm just going to park this issue for now. If they're a manager that is perhaps not as experienced or seasoned, I would say, then they will just go right along with your coworker and make this a big deal. So it just depends on that. But distance yourself from the coworker. Be objective when you talk to your manager, or even if you've already spoken with them, continue to show your facts, your data. Data is very important when you have those situations actually happen to you. And then also just make sure you're being that person that is getting things done, and your executive presence needs to be showcased on every single moment you have with those individuals. We can talk a lot more about that in just a few, but let me keep going in the chat and see what's going on, and let me catch up really quickly. Okay, so let's see. Let me go back to ACGB and then let's go to Kat. ACGB says, okay, besides when information is passed down by 3 different people, who knows what the original comment was? Exactly. We do not know. It is a bit of the telephone game, so that may make it a bit harder to do that. ACGB says, at first I wanted to confront her, but I decided to take 10. Great job. Fantastic job. Also, my manager expects more from me. Being the bigger person, I let it go. You're right. I had to take the emotion out of it since I'm a higher ranking employee. And that, I will tell you, ACGB, I'm so incredibly appreciative of you sharing this story, because ACGB, people go through these type of issues every single day as leaders. We all go through these issues. And I appreciate you mentioning that. And sometimes as leaders, you will find information and you just have to just let it go. You have to let it go and keep moving. But you can let it go, but I don't think you should forget it. I think you should always have it in the back of your mind, so that when you are interacting with this coworker, you know, oh, it's strictly business. Don't ask me questions about the weekend. Don't ask me questions about what's going on in my life. Don't ask me any personal questions whatsoever. We're here to get things done. I'm here to work with you in a polite and professional way, and that is it. That is literally what I have done in those situations when I have been put in a situation where something was blown completely out of proportion. Can we have a conversation about it? After the point, as you mentioned, your managers have already discussed it with you and they're expecting you to be the bigger person. Fine. You just treat the people the way they have treated you, but you still be polite, still be kind, but you just really have to be very direct with this person, because this person does not have your best intentions at heart. Okay, let's go back to Kat. So Kat mentioned, how do I distinguish, hold on, let's see, let me go back up, Kat. How do I communicate uncertainty to my team without losing their confidence? The best way for you to do this, Kat, is to truly be honest with your team. For example, I'll share with you something that happened to me during the pandemic. So I was a C-suite at the time, and during that specific time, I order supplies, I look at supplies, I approve the budgets for supplies, and I noticed specifically that I couldn't order the supplies I needed to order. I couldn't order the same amount of gloves, because I would order 20, 30, 40, 50 boxes of gloves and all kinds of stuff like that. But I noticed when I started making orders, and this is just an example, that I couldn't order the maximum amount I normally did. And I said, what's going on? This is before everything happened, where we all knew what was going on. I said, something's going on here. And I wasn't sure. I really was not, I had no idea. I called the reps on the phone and say, hey, I can't order this box's amount of gloves. What's going on? And they said, look, there's a situation going on. We don't know everything yet, but they are starting to limit supply orders. So that's all I got for you. I said, all right, fine. I called my team in, and they know me, and they knew me well enough to know if it was urgent fire, I would let them know, and this was a fire. And I said, this is what I want you all to do. At the moment, I do not have all the information that I need to be able to address this issue. But what I need you all to do is I need you to call this supply company, and this supply company, and get as many gloves, as many masks as you can, and I need you to do it immediately. Trust me, we got to get some things together. Just do as I ask you to, and let's reconvene within an hour, and let's see what you come up with. Now, that is an example of when I had to communicate. Thank you for the heart emojis, friends. When I didn't have the answers. Did I tell them I didn't have all the answers? Basically, I said something's going on. I do not have all the data. But how do you communicate certainty in uncertainty? The best way for you to do it, Kat, is to be strategic in your delivery. If it is a situation that is going on, Kat, and you're trying to communicate with your team and you don't know how to do it, if you have done your part as a leader and you have got your data, you've collected it, you've read, you've looked at information, you've contacted people, then when you speak to your team, you can speak to the aspects of whatever the project is or the issue is that you're not quite sure about, but everything else you can communicate with confidence. And that's how your team will believe you and build trust in you, because they know that, okay, we know Kat is not entirely sure about what's going on specifically, but Kat was able to tell us what the issue is. So be very strategic in how you communicate, meaning that you have to gather your data together to know what's going on. In my case with the pandemic, when all of that happened, what did I do? I collected data before I even called my team in. I didn't just call them and say, oh my gosh, I can't order my gloves. I don't know what to do. What are we going to do? No, that's not how leaders operate, or that's not how they should operate. Do some operate that way? Yes, they do. Let me know if you've had that in the comments below. But I gathered my data first. I called the rep that I trusted and I'd already built a very good relationship with to say, what's going on? Can you please tell me what's going on? And then he was able to let me know, hey, this is all we can do. This is all they're going to let me to approve right now. So that's all I can tell you. And then I had to think strategically and say, okay, if I'm losing this with this vendor, I need to find another vendor to make the gap. But I told my team after I collected my data. So share your data, share your points, the things you want to talk about specifically, and have it in a strategic way to where you are projecting what you know in a confident way, even though you are communicating uncertainty to your team. I hope that gives you something to think about, Kat. And if you have any questions, let me know. Kat says, how do I distinguish between productive pressure that sharpens me and destructive pressure that breaks me? Kat, that's a really very good question. Let me make sure no one else new has joined. We're going to go back to that. Anna Fitra, hello, welcome, welcome. ACGB, I'm going to go over your statement in just a second. Okay, so Kat asked Kat, this is a really good question. It's a really great question. This is a question that can apply to your personal and to your professional life, both of them. Now, how do you distinguish between productive pressure that sharpens you and destructive pressure that breaks you? Depends on the situation. But a lot of times, let's go break it down. We got productive and destructive. Productive pressure is going to help challenge you. It's going to push you out of your comfort zone. It's going to cause you to do something that you may not be entirely comfortable doing as a professional, as a leader, but you know it's something that intuitively in your mind you could probably do a bit better in. Let me give you an example. If I was in a situation where I started off with my business, I was not on social media at all. Did not do social media at all. I just didn't do it. I didn't have time for it. I had too many other jobs, too many other high stakes situations I was dealing with in people's lives and etc. But as an entrepreneur, and I started to learn that I need to use social media. But it was one of those type of pressures that I wanted to do, but I knew I was not very good at it. I knew I was not good at it, but it was something that I knew that I needed to build on. So if you have a skill, something that you're working on, and you know you could probably do a little bit better in it, a little bit better, that's probably your more productive type pressure, because it's helping you to produce, it's helping you to grow, and there's a lot of struggles that come with growth, but if it's ultimately leading to something very positive for your output and for your outcome, then it's more productive in nature. Now, destructive pressure is a bit different. Destructive pressure can be something that you are going through, but this is essentially impacting you in a very negative way. So, for example, when I was starting out and I was trying to figure out my website, and I'm just giving you an example of destructive pressure. I have plenty of those. Just depends on how much time we have. But one of the things that happened to me is that I started to reach out to a lot of people to work on my website. And I would reach out to people, they would work on the website, and something wouldn't happen, they wouldn't respond, and it was really frustrating. I was very frustrated with this process and it felt very destructive to me. Why? Because someone else was controlling my website and I didn't have the ability to control it and I just could not do what I wanted to do on it and I found it as being very, very challenging and really hard to be able to navigate. If you are in a situation where you are experiencing that type of pressure and it is hurting you, it's impacting you severely financially, it's taking away your sanity, it's causing you to be depressed, it's making you sad, it's making you anxious, then it's probably destructive in nature. And you want to be very careful about that because that productive and destructive type of pressure, it's a fine line, Cat, between the both of them. It's very fine. But you just have to have the discerning mindset to see what's the difference, which one is really helping me. Productive is going to help you grow. Destructive is going to completely destroy you. And if it's something you feel like is going to destroy you, then it may be a pressure that you want to try to alleviate or try not to do. Okay, Kat also said, how do you evaluate whether a leader is failing versus merely struggling through a hard season? Really good question, Kat. One of the ways you can determine if a leader is truly failing or they are struggling, a lot of it comes down to their communication and their knowledge. If someone is simply struggling in their season, they still appear that they know what's going on. They have a good grasp of what's going on, but the way they communicate it may not be the way they normally would communicate it, or it's being communicated in a not confident way. People don't know what you're talking about. You're telling two different stories, or three different stories, or four different stories, or five different stories, and people are just confused. And this is a sign that someone they're struggling a bit. They're having a hard time with communication. Now, if someone is completely failing in this situation, if they're failing as a leader, you see everything go down. Their competence goes down. Their communication goes down. Their trustworthiness goes down. Their credibility goes down. Everything goes down. And that is when someone is failing, when there are not only just one or two areas of their life or their leadership that maybe seems like it's not as it used to be, but there's multiple layers of their leadership that is just not where it needs to be. That's a good indication when someone is either struggling or failing. I will tell you that I have worked with different leaders over the years, C-suite executives, senior VPs, and etc. And a lot of times when they end up struggling quite a bit, they usually have something personal going on that's just distracting them. Like you can tell that they still know what they're talking about. They're physically there, but they're mentally just not there. Have you ever experienced that in your day-to-day conversations as leaders? Let me know in the comments below. But usually you know the person is still there, but you can just tell they are just a bit distant. They just have other things going on. But when someone's failing, they're failing on multiple levels. There's just too many levels to count, and you say, wow, this person's really not hitting the mark. But that's how I would tell the difference, is if someone's really, they're still there, they're still present, they still seem like they know what they're talking about, but they're not communicating as well, that's struggling. But if someone is completely failing on multiple levels, then they're completely failing, and they probably need some support with that. All right, so ACGB says, I like to speak for myself. And ACGB also says, exactly, it has been strictly business, all interactions. Thank you. I appreciate you. Absolutely. And I'm glad that it's been that way. When you have those situations happen, you have to switch gears. Now, the very interesting part about developing your executive presence and being able to maintain it is that when those interactions come up, because they will, ACGB, they will happen all the time. If you have already been communicating with that person in that very direct way, in that very polite, okay, this is what we need to have done way, then when those situations happen, because they will, it doesn't even feel like you're communicating any differently, because you know you've been communicating that way all along. And this is one of the reasons why people tend to struggle sometimes with their executive presence, and why I work so heavily with women in leadership about this, because sometimes we just don't know how we're supposed to interact with people, because we want to build rapport, we want to be nice, we want to be polite, and you can be all of those things, but there has to be this almost like a switch on and off, where you know that I need to be in a professional mode or I need to be more laid back. But being professional, just as you described in all your interactions, will never, ever, 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 ever put you in a bad situation. Never. I always tell my clients when we're in a one-on-one setting, I would much rather prefer for you to be that person that everybody says is very professional, always professional, than to be that person that loses it and starts to speak in a way that's not professional, a bit more lax. And then when something happens, they have to switch gears, so to speak, and they have to act in a more direct way. Then people say, oh, I know this person got really upset by this because the way that they are communicating, because the way that they're acting. Why? Because it's a bit different than what you have done in the past. So, if you're at the point where you can maintain that consistency in terms of being very professional, communicating in a very professional way, then people will not notice how you're treating them differently. You may have situations come up, and this happens to the best of us. It's happened to me, and this is the reason why I share this with you, that I don't want you to make this mistake. We all are going to have situations that come up that stress us out, that frustrate us, especially as leaders. ACGB, obviously you've had some, and Kat has had some too. And it's easy for us to just find that moment, that one moment we have where we just feel like, oh gosh, this is so stressful. Where we maybe say something that lets the other person know, oh, this is so stressful, and you're not being as professional as you normally would. It just takes a moment for people to say, okay, well, I can talk to them about this and that. And then that's where the conversation starts to be a bit more complex. But when you have those moments, even if you're frustrated, that's why, as you mentioned, ACGB, you took a 10. You took a 10, you calmed down, you were able to collect your thoughts, and you just let it go. So taking that time to take a break will be critically important, especially when you're in those situations, especially as a leader, because you do want to make sure that even if you are stressed out, you still are managing and controlling the words that are coming out of your mouth, the expressions that you have on your face, all the things that we talk about here on the channel. You want to be able to manage that even if you are under stress. I had a situation many years ago where I had a stressful situation that happened in the operatory, and I had to really compose myself. But the only way I was able to do it was because I have trained myself to know this is how I need to communicate, this is how I need to speak. I have to speak this way all the time, or people will take it for granted and start communicating with me in a way that I don't appreciate. Cat 23 says, appreciate it, and a heart. You are so very welcome, Cat, and I appreciate you being here. And you asked some really, really great questions. And I will say that the questions you ask are so insightful. You and ACGB asked some really great interactive questions today that will help a lot of people that are watching the channel to gain some insight in terms of what are some things that they may want to do when these real-time challenging situations actually do come up. Because this is why people tend to struggle. This is why I don't want you all to struggle. I want you to do very well in the roles that you're in. So let me know what other questions you have. If you have questions, anything professionally, anything that may be a bit off topic that is still related to where you are right now in your roles and some things that you're working on. As I mentioned earlier, if I could only give you the one, there's many, but if I could only give you one strategy to help you start and be more comfortable communicating under pressure, it would be to manage your emotions under pressure. Everything else will start to flow from there once you manage what's going on in here and what you're feeling in here. And if you can do that, then you can communicate in a way that's a bit more calmer. You're not so emotionally upset. Just as ACGB mentioned, also taking that time to take a break and control your emotions and know that you're better. You're bigger than this situation. You're better than the situation, and you're going to be the person that's taking the higher level, so to speak. Now, there's times when you have to be able to, you may be placed on offense and you have to defend yourself. You have to be ready for those, because there's some situations where you just can't let it slide. I mean, there's some situations that will come up for you, and you may say, you know what? I know this person said X this about me, or specifically, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to defend myself on that. So you have to have a bit of discernment to know exactly when those situations come up, so you know exactly how to manage it. Okay, Cat 23 says, what patterns do you see in leaders who burn out versus those who sustain high performance for decades? Great question, Cat. You have some fantastic questions today, friend, as always. Okay, so patterns of leaders that burn out. They will typically conduct themselves in a different type of way. You may notice that people that are burnt out, they will stop caring about projects or situations or issues that were once very important to them before. Example, if you have someone that was very passionate about this community project that they're working on, and you start talking about this project specifically, and you notice that they just seem not to have that passion for it as they may have had in the past, that person's probably burnt out. I can say that from experience because I've been burnt out. I've been burnt out 2 times in my career, 2 times. And I know how I felt each time. And each time I just simply I didn't care. I didn't care. And it's not that I didn't care, but at that moment in time, I simply just did not care. So if you notice someone that just seems a bit more nonchalant than normal, and they're acting in a way that just seems like, it seems as if they maybe have other things they're worrying about, maybe they have other priorities or other projects that are a bit more important, they may just be tired. They may be burnt out. And especially with leaders, this is something that happens very often. Now, for those people that are sustain high performance for decades, these individuals, you will have a difficult time determining if they're burnt out or not. Let me tell you why. The reason why you will not know if these individuals burnt out or not, because they have been trained to sustain high pressure, high performance for decades. And that goes with many of us. Many of us. I would say that I'm that type of leader. You probably would never know what was going on outside of my life, because I've just been in those high stakes situations where you see a problem, you handle it, you take care of it. You are able to determine what's really urgent and what are some things that you probably need to wait on, and you have a very good way and system to organize problems and prioritize problems. That is really how leaders are able to sustain themselves for decades, because you'll see people that they just keep running a marathon like every single day, and you're thinking to yourself, how is this person able to do this? How are they able to manage all these tasks and projects at one time, all the time? I will guarantee you that this person is very, very much intuitively aware of themselves. They know what they can do, they know what they can't do, and they know when they have to pause and take a break. The people that are burnt out, those are individuals that basically are on a treadmill. They're on the treadmill of leadership, and they are sprinting as fast as they can. They are not going to slow down. They just go as fast as they can, until the point where they just completely just fall out on the treadmill and just pass out. They just can't go anymore. But the people that have sustained that high performance, as you mentioned, Cap, those are the people that are going to be running on the treadmill. They may be running fast, but they may not be running as fast as the person that's just sprinting and going as fast as they can. You may see them just have a nice pace in terms of how they're running. They're not running too fast, they're not running too slow, but they constantly keep moving. They're able to sustain themselves in those situations. And that is how you can tell the difference between someone that's burnt out and someone that is a leader that is able to sustain themselves in those very high performance, high pressure situations over decades. Okay, ACGB also says, okay, last question. No problem at all. We can ask as many questions as you need to. It's Friday night. Typically Friday nights I have a bit more time because I don't have to take my kids to school in the morning, and I'm here to help y'all any way that I can. All I have to do is just work on my YouTube channel and work on my business. So I'm here to support you any way that I can. All right, ACGB says, what do you think of appreciation gifts for the ladies that helped me greatly? I enjoy giving. I know that these ladies are paid, but they really take care of me during tax season. That is very nice. I think that's really nice, and it shows and it tells a lot about your character as someone that is wanting to take care of other people, which is amazing. Now, it depends on what you want to do for the ladies. When it comes to gifts and etc., there's always the one. There's always that one person who is just above and beyond amazing. There always is one. And whenever you have that one person, you have to determine how can I give something to all the ladies in an equal way. And that's what I have found to be sometimes successful. If you decide you want to get a gift for the ladies or do something in terms of appreciation, I would give them all the same thing if you feel like you want to. If you want to make it more individualized, you're welcome to do that. But I tend to try to do things in a way to where I try to make it as uniform as possible because sometimes people will get biases, they'll get their feelings hurt, etc. I try to avoid that if I can. Now, there's a lot of different things that you can do for the ladies. It just depends because, as you mentioned, they take care of you during tax season. Gift cards are always something wonderful. If you have a gift that you want to give to them, that's always nice too. If you don't want to necessarily show a dollar amount specifically, some people don't want to show a dollar amount. They don't want to say, "Oh, I just gave you a $50 gift card or $25 gift card or etc." You can do that. But if you want to give them a gift, you can. Treats and snacks are always welcome, I think, for everybody, regardless of who they are. So if you give them a treat or a snack, that's always helpful. Some chocolate, some candy, something else. That's always good to look at as well. But there's a lot of different ways you can do it. It's just a matter of what else do you feel like you want to do and what is your budget to do it. And I would use your budget that you're trying to work with and divide it up by the number of people and make sure you are helping everyone equally, if that makes sense. ACGB says, I gave them gift cards and brought them lunch. Exactly. I made them all even. Exactly. It's right. There's always one. And ACGB, I'm sure there's one person that you know this person is really very, 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 very helpful to you. And making everything easy sounds good. So if you've done that, you've given them gift cards, you bought them lunch, I would say that is very good. And I don't know if you necessarily need to do anything else for appreciation because that in itself shows a lot of appreciation that you have for them. Most people would not even do that, ACGB, and it's so very kind of you that you do, but most people probably wouldn't even do that. So I would say you're in a really good place. You've already done what you needed to do. I don't, unless you want to do something additional for them, it's up to you. And if you feel like you want to, then just find something that's similar to what you've done and make it in a way to where it's uniform for everyone so people don't necessarily say, oh no, I don't, I got this and you got that, and they're trying to look and see, well, maybe switch gifts with you. You don't want to do that. Just make it the same. So I appreciate you asking, but it sounds like you took really good care of them already. Now, as I mentioned, I would give you the gift of being able to communicate under pressure for sure. ACGB says, thank you, smiley face. You're so very welcome, friend. I appreciate that. Really great discussion, really great topics that you all came up with today. If you have any other questions, you're more than welcome to ask me. I'll go over a couple things really quickly, just briefly on the channel. There's a couple of videos that it's going to take me a little while to find, but there's some situations where many of you have not been on the live, such as yesterday, where people will come on there and say the most offensive, ridiculous things. And a lot of times when I talk to my clients specifically and when I'm talking to my audience as well, sometimes you just don't know how to conduct yourself in those very high pressure situations where someone may be cursing at you or calling you an inappropriate name or etc., unless you actually see somebody going through it. Give me a little bit of time. I'm going to try to break down and try to look through some of my content because I've had some definite trolls and actors on here in the past where you see how I respond. And the way that I respond to you all is the exact same way I respond to those individuals specifically. And I do want to try to place them on a playlist so that you can actually see in real action, this is how you may want to handle a situation if someone calls you out of your name, or if someone says something very rude and offensive to your audience, or if someone says something that's just completely just inappropriate, not nice. I do want to do that in a playlist, and as soon as I get that playlist together, I will let you all know. It's going to take me a little time to compile it, but I believe that it will help you to be able to manage those situations when they happen. So you can see how I manage it. Because for the most part, I will say for myself, I'm a very calm person. I've been trained this way because I've dealt with a lot more than I could ever even say on camera. And I want you all to learn that even if you're in those situations and someone says something very aggressive to you, even in public, thank you for the heart emojis, even if they say something in public to you, or you're in a meeting, you see someone disrespect you or insult you, I want you to be that person that says, nope, no, we're going to have this conversation and I'm not going to let you continue to disrespect me in public like that. I want you to be that person that's empowered to do so. And I can hopefully do it by showing you how I manage the situations when they come up. Cat 2030 says, hopefully you'll forgive me for not showing up yesterday. Schoolwork was loaded. Oh, Cat, no problem. Cat, I was in school and working full time. Cat, you never have to apologize for anything, friend. Take care of yourself. I will always be here. The videos will be here. Don't worry about that. It's good to see you. I'm glad that you were not live yesterday because I would not want you to be offended by the word that this person called me yesterday for no reason. Don't even know this person. But anyways, I'll definitely do a video about that for sure. ACGB says, that would be awesome. Thank you. Sure, you're welcome. And I'm on LinkedIn. There's actually a post on LinkedIn that I'm going to do a video about. I haven't done it just yet. But not only in the verbal sense can people disrespect you, especially as women in leadership. I take that very seriously. You have to be very careful about who's saying what and what their intention is, but also in a written format too. So I've had a post where someone made a comment it just didn't seem appropriate, and I want to share with my audience. It's on my High Stakes Communication Leadership, Women in Leadership group on LinkedIn. If you're not on there, you're welcome to join. But it's a video that I'm going to do about looking at the response the person had, what they said, and why I decided to respond in that way. Because sometimes, even in writing, people can try to insult you and try to be very, very disrespectful to you. And you wonder, why did they do that? But the same process that I share with y'all in terms of communicating under pressure is the exact same process I do personally every single day. And I want to let you know it will help you. It will make you very successful in those challenging situations if you follow it. And just as ACGB mentioned earlier today, you have to determine immediately, this is something you have to do as soon as a situation happens and presents itself. Is this intentional or is it unintentional? Is this person a friendly or are they not a friendly? Where's this conversation going? And sometimes you may have to give it a little bit to see, this person said this, let me respond in this way, in the most objective way, and see how they respond. And if you determine that they respond back in a way to where you say, okay, no, they're being insulting and disrespectful, then you have to respond in a more direct way. If you determine that this person is responding in a way that is, maybe they are not knowledgeable or they don't understand, then you respond to them in a different way. But I'm going to try to get those things together as much as I can and put them into a playlist and try to keep track of them, because I believe that's a great way for you all to learn how to deal with these situations. Because there's so much I can tell you with us having conversations and dialogue, but sometimes you have to see it in real time. Sometimes they may be so offensive I can't really say it, and that has happened a couple of times, but there have been times when I've been able to say something, or if I feel like it's going to help you all. So know that if I see a comment that's inappropriate, that I believe I want to say something about, it is only for the benefit of the audience, for you all to see how I'm going to handle this person. If it's something that's complete nonsense and just silliness, I'm just not even going to go there. But there are times I will strategically say, okay, this person said this, let me respond to it so my audience can see how I respond. Therefore, if they're in a situation where someone calls them a word that's not nice or says something to them that's aggressive, then they remember, oh, I remember Dr. Jacinta said this when that happened. So maybe let me try to do that. I just want to help you the way that I can. Okay, Cat 2030 says, hope you reported the person for hate speech. Well, the way that it works on the channels, on the back end of it, and that's why as soon as I get a little bit more in terms of time, I'm going to end up having moderators on the channel, because that will help. That will actually be very helpful. I was on, I don't know if you all remember Hidden Human TV. I was on that live today, and I noticed that Hidden Human TV had a moderator also. But when I get a moderator, it'll help with that somewhat. But on the back end, you have to try to remember that your audience is watching. And you don't want your audience to have to see curse words, derogatory words, and things like that in a live setting. I don't want that environment for my audience at all. So you have to kind of move pretty quick in terms of what you can do. But yes, you can definitely report somebody for hate speech and things like that. Kat says, detach from the content. Remind yourself this is about their anger, frustration, not my worth. Their words say more about them than you. Yes, they always do. But what happens sometimes with people, Kat, is they get caught in the moment. They get caught in the moment, and all those things that they know are true, they just poof go out of their mind, and then they just act in an emotional way. But you're right. It is more about that person and what they are going through or what they're reflecting on you. And that was actually something that was mentioned today that I was looking at for Hidden Human TV. He had a live this morning. I just happened to catch it before I went live. And the live itself, it was very interesting. There was 10 signs of someone manipulating you. And one of those signs, Kat, is something that I would say is similar to what you say. They're reflecting themselves on you. It was a good list, believe it or not. It was actually a very good list of 10 ways to keep in mind to know if someone is trying to reflect on you or trying to manipulate you. Because sometimes people will do that, especially in a live setting. They just want to see how you respond. And you're always going to have trolls that are here and there and doing everything. Cat 2030 says, I would like to run for moderator role. Absolutely, Cat. Definitely. When I get to that point, I will absolutely let you know. Thank you for the heart emojis, friends. I definitely will let you know for sure. I know you're in college. I want you to take care of your college, but if you're live, then yes, we'll definitely work on that as soon as I get a couple things figured out, because a lot of times it's hard for you to do that moderator role online on the actual cell phone, because I'm on my cell phone. So I have to work through those logistics of how you assign it. A lot of times people will assign moderators when they are working from their laptop. So when I'm at that point when I want to work from my laptop and I have my studio set up, then I'll probably be able to transition. But in the vertical setting, it's hard to pin people as moderators. They have it more interactive. I've been on YouTube's live stream research panel for a year now, and there's one more assignment I'm doing right now, and they're really trying to make it more interactive. I can't tell you all they're doing because I can't tell you because they will be mad at me if I did, but they're trying to make the live streaming experience interactive for everybody, so that they start to engage more with being live. And that's why we work on our secret things that they have us do to be able to give them some insight on that. Kat says valid. Yes, absolutely. So there's a lot of things that come with being a content creator, and there's a lot of things that come with dealing with high pressure situations. It happens. Managing your emotions is important, and just as Kat mentioned, making sure you detach yourself from the content. And that's important. And we talked about this previously, where I can't remember the actual person, specifically their name, but we had a conversation about what you do when someone's angry or when someone is saying things that are inappropriate. And I explained to them that you don't want to put gas on fire. You definitely want to be the person that is a bit more level in terms of your communication, being calm, and etc. Instead of being the person that is just really upset, that's very, very mad. It just makes the situation just even more challenging and hard to deal with. We're really close to 1,000 subscribers, which is a tremendous milestone on any content creator's journey, any business owner's journey. So I appreciate you all and your support for the channel. If you have anybody specifically that you know that may be struggling with aspects of communication and they just want to sharpen how they're speaking, not only just for their current roles, but maybe they're trying to start a business or be in a more highly visible role, then feel free to share the channel to them. If you can encourage them just to take a look at my live videos, there's a lot of content here specifically because this is something that I'm very passionate about. I am sharing with you all, there are zero YouTube channels that are actually doing high stakes, high pressure communication in a live setting just like we're doing it now. Most of the time, the videos that are live on YouTube, or not live, the channels that are on YouTube that somewhat talk about those type of situations, they are usually very highly edited, highly polished, and very, very overly academic. you can tell these individuals have been in academic settings specifically, but they may not have really been under the fire, so to speak, as myself. And this channel is very unique. I am literally going to build the biggest content library on high stakes, high pressure communication on the planet for leaders, even though I specialize in women in leadership in terms of my audience that I work with directly for my executive coaching and consultation services. But a lot of the information I do share is very universal to all leaders. And I know I want to make a big impact on the world and help everyone be able to master this because most people struggle with it. Cat 23 says, be the bigger person in this kind of situation. Yes, and that's exactly what ACGB did in that situation with the coworker. Because you have to be the bigger person, but being the bigger person doesn't mean being the doormat either. And even though you're the bigger person, there's just times or situations that come up where you have to stand up for yourself. You have to say something regardless of the situation. The situation that happened with her coworker specifically, that's a situation she 100% was correct. Let it go. Sometimes people are just completely not worth your time. They're not worth your energy. They're not worth your thoughts at all. And I don't mean to sound in a way that I'm being very harsh, but in all honesty, when you are elevating as an individual, when you're elevating as a leader, there comes a point in time where you start to recognize your worth, your value, and what situations are worth you saying something about and what situations are not worth you saying something about. And being able to discern between those two will help you out tremendously as you are growing in your leadership journey. Because many leaders, believe it or not, they may be in a situation where something is not really worth their time and they make it worth their time. And that's where you start to lose traction in terms of how you influence people, how you build trust, because you're dealing with the aspects of situations and issues that are so minor that it's just simply not worth your time to even deal with. So I appreciate you mentioning that, Kat, because you do have to be the bigger person, but just know that there's times where you may have to say something to other people. I will say that most of the time, the situations I've dealt with that have been big situations, majority of the time I do not say anything, but the minority of the time when I do, it's definitely needed to say. I'm that type of person and that type of leader that I like to observe. Even though, like for instance, the coworker in ACGB, we know this coworker automatically is not a friendly. Like I already know this coworker probably had an issue with ACGB previous in the past and just maybe didn't want to materialize it or state it out loud. And now that they had this one opportunity that ACGB asked them to do something nicely, they're just say, oh, I'm going to go tell my manager what ACGB did to me. And that's just how people are. But I like to observe people because people will tell you so much about themselves, about what they're thinking, about how they're acting, the relationships they have with people, the conversations they have with people. If you just sit back and watch and observe. We talked about this yesterday, looking, and thank you for the heart emojis. We talked about looking, I think it was yesterday, or maybe the day before. Looking and observing are two totally different communication strategies. Looking is what most people do, but if you are trained, you are observing and you're noticing what's happening because you just collect information, and that's what leadership is really all about. Collecting data, collecting information, knowing who you can speak with, knowing who you can't speak with, knowing what conversations you need to have in front of people, knowing what conversations you don't need to have in front of people. All of that will help you to be that leader that really does stand out because you will start to learn how to read the room just by observing how people are interacting with you or how people are interacting with other people or how people are specifically communicating to each other or communicating about a specific topic. You will learn, I would say, majority of the information that you need to know just by observing. Now, there's going to be things that happen that you just simply are not going to be able to know because you're not in somebody's mind, so not mine specifically. But if you observe them and listen, you'll pick up on a lot. You'll pick up on quite a bit. And a lot of times, you may not need to say anything about it. You just know that this is information. And when those situations come up, you may say, well, I know I don't want to have that conversation with this person because they're not going to do anything about it. I already seen many times they've been tested in the past and they will not handle a situation. This will be a situation specifically, as Kat mentioned, when you have a leader that's failing. You know they're failing. They're failing. So if you know this person is failing and you bring this issue to them, you can bring it. Make sure you have it documented in writing if it affects your department specifically. But if you know someone's failing, you know they are not going to be able to resolve the issue for you. Just take mental note and say, okay, well, I'll resolve it the best way that I can, and I'll go and do something different. Kat says, when someone verbally attacks you, the gap between looking, reacting with tunnel vision, and observing, widening your awareness is exactly what creates the space for a calm response. Kat, that's a really fantastic insight that you share, because that is what creates the calm response. Because you are looking at the person in terms of how they are responding. And as you mentioned so very eloquently, you are widening your awareness to this person. You are seeing exactly what is going on right now. And once you see that, you are able to react calmly, because you already see and can tell this person is acting in a very highly emotional, highly volatile type of state. And you just pick it up. I mean, the more you interact with these type of situations, you can have a conversation with somebody, and I'm telling you, you will get to the point where you, in a second, okay, I know where this is going. Like, you have an idea, this person's upset, this could potentially escalate, or this person is just frustrated with the situation, and it probably will not escalate any further than what it is. I told you all, many years ago, I had a situation that happened to me with a patient. This is a long time ago. And this patient literally was upset because they had to wait for more than 10 minutes. And, we explained to the patient at that time when I was working, we actually are doing procedures on people and they're awake. And it's a little bit different in healthcare, because most of the time, if you're getting a procedure completed, you're probably sleeping. But in the wonderful world of dentistry, most of the time you probably are awake unless you're being sedated. But this patient specifically, this is just an example of angry person. This patient specifically didn't want to wait. It was literally 10 minutes. 10 minutes. When they came to the back, I'm telling you, friends, this person cursed me out. And I've never been cursed out ever, especially from a patient. I'm usually really nice, just the same way I communicate with you all, same way I communicate with my patients. This person cursed me out, saying all kinds of explicatives I'm not going to say here on this channel, but said all kinds of stuff for waiting 10 minutes. People just go off. Anyways, the reason I mention that is because this person was already upset, and I could tell they were already upset. I mean, the person got so mad because he literally, and I'm telling you ladies, he literally got his wallet, okay? Got his wallet, opened his wallet, and took out his Trump card and told me, I know President Trump. This is years ago. I know President Trump, and I'm going to call my lawyers, and all this kind of things. And I just said, okay, like, I don't know President, like I didn't know at the time Donald Trump was the president of the United States. What rock would I have literally been living under if I didn't know that? But I could already pick up immediately this person could potentially escalate because he was cursing and not using nice curse words, no, the really bad ones. I knew it could potentially escalate, and I did not want it to escalate. And so when the person started bringing out the cards and all the calm lawyers, because we were 10 minutes late, I determined right there, okay, this is not worth my time. I give this man one more time. Actually, at that point in time, I said, look, if you're going to communicate with this way, how are we going to be able to resolve this issue? But ultimately, it ended up well. It turned out fine. But still, you have to really be mindful and have that heightened awareness, because this person could be yelling, screaming, cursing at you, all these type of things. And you could be sitting there just as calm, like, okay. And that in itself will either cause the person to calm themselves down, or they will just get mad because they don't understand why you're not being mad. So I appreciate you mentioning that, Kat, because it does help you to create that very calm response. So Kat said the core skill is training yourself to observe the attack as a phenomenon rather than look at it as a personal reality. That's a really good point, Kat. I appreciate you mentioning that. And that is a great insight, because you do have to you have to almost freeze yourself in time. You see the chaos happening, the person get mad, but you have to pretty much just focus in on that person. Thank you for the heart emojis, and see them for what they are doing and how they're acting, and think to yourself, this person is acting completely ridiculous. I am my mind is way up here. I'm not going down there. So I'm gonna let them stay up there in the clouds if they want to stay up there in the clouds, but I choose to be down here on earth for the time being. And you just observe. You just observe in terms of what they're doing. Okay, Kat says the attack is information about the other person's state. It does not have to become your emotional state. Good, Kat. I appreciate you mentioning that, because you're right. You don't have to. People will try to project things on you, to project their insecurities, their frustrations, and etc., to make you try to feel bad. They just do that, and that's the way people try to manipulate you. And that's something that came up today in the list of 10 signs someone's manipulating you from hidden human TV. That's something that people do. They will try to project their emotional state on you. Kat said that's scary. It wasn't scary for me because I've dealt with, believe it or not, I've dealt with, I would say, worse situations, maybe where I wasn't being cursed at by an employee, but I felt threatened. I've been threatened many times. Like, I felt very threatened a couple of times. So that one wasn't scary. I would say, Kat, that situation specifically to me, it just showed me how completely ridiculous some people can be. And you have people out there that like to say someone's name just to drop someone's name in that case. And it just, in a way, I felt sad for that person, because they waited for a few minutes, and I can't just jump out of a procedure to go see them in 10 minutes if something happens. And the part about it, to me, in retrospect, in that moment, I didn't like it. And the problem I had at that time, this was years ago, I was working for a company. And if it was me by myself, that person would have been out of there. But I was working for a company. So you're in that box where you're kind of confined in terms of, okay, how am I going to respond to this in a way that reflects this company, and etc. But if it was me by myself, or if it was when I was a C-suite executive, that person would have already been gone, and I would have called the police. But I couldn't do that in this situation. And I felt a bit concerned for that person. If you have to be that emotionally volatile and that mad to where you have to threaten people with lawyers, you have to threaten me with your Trump card, and I promise you all, to this day, I had never seen a Trump card in my life until I saw that one. But if you have to feel like you have to just project that threat, I'm going to call my lawyers. I know President Trump. I'm going to call people to come here. I'm going to call the news. I feel very, very, and I mean this in all sincerity, I feel very sorry for those people, because they must be having a very miserable life. They have to be. And all I can do is just have empathy for them and say, you know what? I'm sorry you're having a really bad life. That's not my problem. But ultimately, you're not going to communicate with me that way. I don't care if you're having a bad life or not. There's a certain point in time where you have to say, I can empathize with you, but there's a way we communicate as adults. There's a way we communicate as people, and cursing and all this stuff is completely unnecessary. So yes, it wasn't scary. I was not scared, Kat. That was not the time I was scared. I felt sorry for that person. I really did. They must have a miserable life to feel like that's all that their immediate reaction is. And apparently, what I learned in retrospect, after the fact, is this person was doing the same thing at the front desk. They were at the front desk in the lobby. I didn't know this until afterwards. They were in the lobby doing the same thing. They were cursing. I got my Trump card. He was showing his Trump card. It's like, okay, that's great. We know who the president of the United States is. Are you his best friend? Is he going to come here right now? I highly doubt it. But this person, in their mind, that's just what they thought. So all I can do is feel sorry for them, that they feel like they have to just threaten people in that way to feel like they are better than you. And situations like that, those individuals are not worth your time, because they ultimately are trying to project themselves on you in a way they feel like they're better than you, or they think they're better than you. And therefore, the way you the way you respond, you have to respond in the most direct, no politeness way, because you have to let them know you're not better than me just because you got lawyers. So do I. But you just want to make sure that person knows, don't try that again. Don't do it again. And I did made it very clear, so when the next time that person came back, there was none of that. There was none of that nonsense happening. That person got it together, and he happened to be a man. So, of course, for me as a woman, oh, I take that seriously. You are not going to communicate with me that way, period. Because some people will look at you as a woman and they will say, oh, you're a woman, I'm going to automatically communicate with you in this kind of way. And I know that may be something that may be a trigger for some people, but I'm speaking reality. I have been through it, I have seen it. Is it always this way? Absolutely not. But there are situations where people will try to test you because you are a woman in leadership and they think that you don't know what you're doing. So you have to just always be on the ready when those situations happen so that you can respond in a way that addresses those situations when they come up, in a way that showcases your executive presence. And yes, you know exactly what you're doing, and that's not how you're going to speak to me. And that's it. Okay, so Kat says, the more you share your stories, Doc, the more I realize that you've been part of heavy battles. Exactly. Makes me appreciate you even more, Heart. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, I've dealt with some very interesting situations, which is why I'm here to share them with you all to help you communicate under pressure, because I didn't have someone tell me this is how you communicate under pressure. I struggled with it a lot when I was just starting out as a leader and as a professional. And that's why I really want to share with you all what I've learned, mistakes that I made, and etc. It was, I will tell you, with that one interaction, I did make a mistake. I did make one mistake, and I had to catch myself because the conversation was so completely just ridiculous. I have a meter in my head, and I just have this as a C-suite executive, as a director. And thank you for the heart emojis. I have a nonsense meter. And there comes a place where I'm listening. Okay, I understand. This sounds a little odd. I'm gonna keep listening. But then it gets to the point where it's just my nonsense meter. You've already reached it, and I just completely just shut down. So what did I do in this case? The one thing I did, and I'm not upset that I did it. My humor came out. When the person brought out the trump card, okay, when the person brought the trump card out to me, I just said, in the most sarcastic way I could have said it, I know who the president of the United States is. And I couldn't help it. I just couldn't. It was just too much for me. I said, okay, this is just too much. Because it really was. And sometimes you may get those moments where you just think, okay, this is complete nonsense. And your emotions will not necessarily get the best of you, but in that case, it just was too much for me. I said, okay, I know who the president of the United States is. And left it at that. Okay, Kat says respect 100, and ACGB says exactly miserable life. Yes, people like that have a miserable life. So ACGB, that person that you're dealing with at your job, that coworker, it just depends. They may slide in that category. Okay, because I'm telling you, when people come at you in a very negative way, somewhat out of nowhere for no reason, they usually have something going on in their life that they're struggling with. And we all struggle with things. Don't get me wrong. All of us struggle with things. I struggle with things. Everybody does. But it's just the way you respond and how you internalize it and how you move forward is what's most important. The individual that you had that conversation with, ACGB, they probably are struggling with something, and they're most likely it's something about you that they may take offense to, they may be jealous about, because that's what I have noticed when people start to act out, if they see something that you have that they do not have. That happened to me personally when I was working in different roles. Specifically, I've had situations where my managers at the time saw that I had something, and they completely acted out in a very, 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 very mean way once they had the chance to do so. So it's happened. It happens a lot. And just know that you're doing the right thing. You're being the bigger person. And you're going to be in a whole another level than this individual at some point in time. Or you already are there based on what you told me already. So I hope this gives you some insight. I know we did a bit of conversations. I would love to hear from you. What are some situations that you have personally dealt with where you noticed maybe that the situation has been a bit more challenging and you decided to turn that conversation into a more positive outcome, or maybe you had a situation where it just was a hostile conversation like I had with this patient that was upset about waiting for 10 minutes. How did you manage it? What are some things that you all did specifically in those situations? So we'll talk about that for a few moments. I will say in the interim, I mentioned about this previously, so I do want to mention it again. There is a event that I plan on hosting later this year with my audience as a whole, so we have the chance to at least interact with each other outside of YouTube. And it will most likely be a Zoom event. Zoom is typically the best way to get a lot of people together on video. If I see anything else, I'll let you all know. But I do plan on hosting some type of event later this year to just interact with the audience. And I plan on, thank you for the heart emojis, probably doing it across two different types of time zone, multiple time zones, in the morning, in the evening, in the early morning, and etc., just to capture my audience, because many individuals that are watching the live and watching the replays, thank you for the heart emojis, they are in different time zones and they're in different parts of the world, and I want to make sure that I capture as many people as I possibly can. So let me know what questions you all have, if there's anything I can support you with. If you see anything that really resonates with you in terms of a content or etc., just let me know. Kat, there's a couple videos that I'm working on for you specifically in terms of topics relating to some of the ideas that you had to discuss. So I'm working on a couple of those. I'm going to be bringing some of that in next week. And if you have anything that comes up, just put it in the comments. I'll be happy to write a response or do a video for you. If you're at a point where you know you need to communicate at that next level, whether you are starting your business, you are advancing in your career, or you're doing a lot of things and you know that you're going to be in front of people a lot more, you're going to be very highly visible, definitely reach out to me on any platform, LinkedIn, Instagram, and here on YouTube. I spend a bit of time on Facebook, not much, but most of my channels I spend time on are going to be LinkedIn for sure, Instagram, and YouTube, of course. I'm on YouTube the most out of all of them. So I hope you all have an absolutely amazing weekend. Kat and ACGB, I appreciate you so much for providing some really great insights during our conversation today. And I look forward to seeing you all in the next video next week. Bye for now.